Veç pak, ekonomia oma.
Keep open for the...
Are you ready, guys?
Are we good?
Okay.
All right, good morning. I'm happy to take a few questions. Before I do, there's a couple issues I wanted to just raise at the top. The first is I wanted to speak a little bit about the ongoing discussion about the draft statute on the Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. I want to reiterate, I do not have new points to make here, but I think it's important to restate the U.S. policy here. The U.S. believes that it is an obligation for Kosovo to establish an association of Serb majority municipalities. And in fact, I'll also note that as recently as last night, the European Union in its Council conclusions restated that expectation as well, that the government of Kosovo should move forward with that. The U.S. position has been clear. We believe that an association of Serb majority municipalities should be consistent with Kosovo's current constitution, that it should be consistent with the Constitutional Court decision, that there should not be a third layer of government, that there should not have executive authorities. We do not want another Republika Srpska, and we do not want something that would negatively affect the good functioning of the Kosovan state. I note that the government of Kosovo received a draft from Miroslav Lajčák, the EU Special Representative, together with representatives of Germany, France, Italy, and the United States. That draft statute represented all of our government's views of how best to do this in a manner consistent with those conditions I laid out. I also note that that draft statute was subsequently endorsed in a written statement by the Chancellor of Germany, President of France, and Prime Minister of Italy. So I have to restate the fact that while we welcome constructive feedback, I'm a little bit puzzled by so much commentary and so much criticism of this effort. We think focus should be on how can Kosovo move forward with seeing this draft adopted and moved to the Constitutional Court. If there are questions about its constitutionality, and as I've said before, I will say again, there's only one body that is capable of making the determination what conforms with Kosovo's constitution and what does not. That is the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo, but we believe this should be moving forward and moving forward quickly. And all of those who have talked about the importance of being in sync with the United States and coordinated with the United States and the West and Europe should look closely at the fact that this draft has come from all of Kosovo's friends in Europe and from the United States. So that's the first issue I want to just touch on. The second issue I want to touch on is an issue that's just come up in the last few days, and that is the implementation of the administrative instruction for citizens to recall elected officials. I want to remind the reason this administration instruction was put into place late summer, early fall, was as a result of a very direct request from the European Union and the United States that Kosovo put into place a system so that citizens could recall mayors if they chose to do so. We saw that as an important step in achieving a de-escalation of the situation in the north of Kosovo. And again, I'm not going to state a new position, but the United States was quite clear. While we believe the 4 mayors elected in the north were elected in a legal way, no one should be satisfied with an election in which less than 4% of the registered voters actually came and voted, and these mayors clearly do not fully represent all of the constituency whom they serve. So the government of Kosovo responded to this and put into place a structure by which citizens could, following certain steps, ensure or carry out a process to recall elected officials. I have to say it is incredibly important that all officials in Kosovo at all levels, they should be doing everything possible to facilitate the full implementation of this administrative instruction. They should be going out of their way to ensure that citizens can exercise their democratic rights. Now, I acknowledge that this has never happened before in Kosovo. This administrative instruction is new, and while the Constitution has allowed for recall, this is the first time there's ever been a process for it to happen. So it's inevitable that there could be some confusion or even some potential missteps. But I have to be clear what the expectation of the United States is, which is citizens have a democratic right, if they wish to follow it, to begin a process and to carry out a process for elected officials to be recalled. There are a number of requirements for that to happen, but we fully expect the central government and officials at all levels to do everything possible to be as flexible as possible, consistent with the law, to ensure that citizens can exercise their democratic right. And we are very concerned if anyone is not showing that understanding and flexibility. So that's what I wanted to say at the top. I'm happy to take any specific questions people might have.
Ambassador, the opposition in Kosovo has said that it is worried about the draft status presented to them. Is this draft prone to a change?
I don't, that is a question for Miroslav Lajčák. I believe Miroslav Lajčák has told the government of Kosovo and others that he's of course open to feedback. But I believe Mr. Lajčák and his team, with support from the United States and others, worked pretty closely on this draft to ensure that it did meet all those requirements I laid out. So I think the question is there room for improvement? Possibly, but that we also can't be so stuck on specifics to lose the momentum and the importance of moving forward with the association.
Mr. Ambassador, how close you are following the energy issue? Having said that, when does the whole process start, and what would be the specific role of Elector Sever, and what would be your message to the citizens in Iran?
So it's hard for me to talk about the very specifics of implementing a really complicated and technical agreement, but there's a couple of important points to make on the energy roadmap and the recent commercial agreements reached. As part of the EU-facilitated dialogue, which the United States has fully supported, Kosovo and Serbia reached agreement last June of 2022, on a roadmap for changing the status of the North so that customers receiving electricity would be billed, as they are in any other country in the world, for the energy they consume. That is the right thing, and my understanding is most of the residents of the North understand and accept that appropriately they should be paying for the electricity they consume. We had hoped to see faster implementation of the roadmap, and in fact the roadmap itself had some fairly clear timelines that have not been met, and that's disappointing. But we're delighted that this really important step of a commercial agreement now between KEDS and Electrosever has been achieved. I think it's going to be up to KEDS and Electrosever to communicate to consumers' electricity exactly how it will be implemented and under what timeline and under what circumstances. And this is complicated. There's still a lot of technical work that has to be done, including, I believe, installation of meters that will allow the energy companies to know the exact amount of electricity being consumed. So I can't speak to timelines. I can speak to our commitment and support to seeing this process go forward. Our belief that it is very appropriate that consumers of electricity actually pay for the use of that electricity. Also our expectation and understanding that this will be a fairly significant change, and so it needs to be rolled out in a way that is clearly understood by all and in a way that reflects some patience in solving what is a complicated technical issue.
We have time for one more question.
Mr. Ambassador, about Banska, United States of America and the EU and all other international partners asked from Serbia to cooperate and to take all necessary steps towards that. Since Milan Badojcic and others are now wanted persons from Interpol, do you think that this is the last test for Serbia to extradite Badojcic, or if it doesn't do so, is the United States and other international partners, are they in fact going to take any measures or any sanctions against Serbia? And another one.
Can we just stop there? Because I won't be able to remember the next question.
Okay.
And you asked me a long one.
So
Let me answer this first, and we'll see if we have time for a follow-up. So just on Banska, let me say a couple things I've said before, but that absolutely merit repeating. We condemn what happened. I've expressed on a personal basis and on behalf of the United States our condolences both to the people of Kosovo and of course to the Bunjaku family directly for the loss of Mr. Bunjaku. That should have never happened. A police officer should not be killed in the line of duty fulfilling his responsibilities. With regard to the question, Mr. Radojcic, I would just say what I've said all along. The United States believes that all those responsible for this criminal attack need to be held accountable, and we expect that to happen, and we've made that clear to authorities in Serbia. Now, I can't speak to exactly how Serbia will or won't respond to an Interpol red notice, but I will note one of the premises to your question I believe to be incorrect. A red notice simply asks governments potentially to arrest someone on the basis of one country's legal process. But there are a number of times when, on the basis of a red notice, in many countries, a given government determines that it will not take action to extradite on the basis of a red notice. There has to be extradition treaties in place. There has to be a lot of other conditions. So I'll repeat what our expectation is. Our expectation is that those responsible for this attack will be held accountable. And we've made that very clear to Serbian authorities and other authorities as well.
I asked that because you just asked Serbia to cooperate. And my second question towards this is that EU accepted that they did not accept a report only from Kosovo authorities about what happened in Banjska, but from other allies too. Did the United States or KFOR, NATO send their report, and what is being said on that report about Banjska and what happened really on September 24th?
As I've said many times, the United States also is very interested in what happened in Banjska on September 24th. And we have been doing our own assessment of that, largely relying, but not solely, on information provided by the government of Kosovo. That assessment is still underway and still concluding. So I will just repeat our view. Those responsible for this attack need to be held accountable. We've made that very clear. That continues to be our position.
So did you send a special report?
I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much.
Ambassador,
Yep.